all to the workshop on formatting your thesis or dissertation. I'm Dr. Kuralt from the Department of Rhetoric and Writing. And today I'm going to be walking you through the guidelines that are available on the Graduate School website for correctly formatting your thesis and dissertation. Okay, so you can go to this webpage at the Graduate School website and download from this link the most current copy of the dissertation and thesis guidelines. And let me say, if there are any of you who are here today who are ahead of the game, you're a little bit early in this, if you take this workshop now but you don't actually graduate until a semester from now or a year from now, it's always a good idea to come back to this website and download the most recent version of the guide just in case anything has changed. Hopefully now that we've got the non-binding formats kind of stabilized, things should stay relatively the same for a while, but it's always the responsibility of the student to make sure that you're up with the most current guidelines. I'm going to walk you through a process of setting up your formatting that will make things as easy for you as possible. Because I know it seems like some kind of cruel torture that after all the trouble that you go through to write your dissertation or thesis, they then test you on your ability to format in Microsoft Word at the end of it. And then they ask you to do some particularly tortuous things. So one of the worst things in the whole guidelines is there are some pages at the beginning that have no numbers. And then there are pages in the middle that have little Roman numerals. And then there are pages in the third section where it's Arabic numerals in the right-hand corner. And you have to figure out how to have all these things in one document and make these transitions. And all it takes is not clicking one checkbox to screw the whole thing up. So, if you follow the guidelines that we've laid out in the handout here, which we can email you electronic copies of so you can have the pretty color version and their black and white printouts there, your life will be much easier, and it makes it easier to troubleshoot what's going on with your document. As I walk you through, too, I will talk to you about some of the most common mistakes that people make in the formatting process and tell you ways that you can work around these. If you have questions that are specific to your situation, then I encourage you to stop me at any time, just raise your hand and ask your questions, because chances are somebody else in the room has the same questions, too. Is there anything you'd like to chat about before we begin? Okay. Let's start then. Oh, go ahead, please.
Is the formal thesis proposal that have anything to do with this?
No, it does not. This is only for the actual thesis or dissertation, and the proposals can be in any format that's acceptable to your program coordinator. The only thing that is the same between a proposal for a thesis and dissertation and the actual thesis or dissertation is that when you successfully defend your proposal, your committee still has to submit a form that's called the Report of the Supervising Committee that's signed. So they do that after the proposal, and they do that after the thesis or dissertation. But it's their responsibility to get that form and make sure all the signatures are on it. Usually students do not handle that form. Great question. Okay, so the first thing that I'll encourage you to do as you're setting up your formatting is, in whatever document is going to be your thesis or dissertation, go ahead and, if you are not planning to have it bound, set the margins to 1 inch all around. In many cases, that's the default setting anyhow. If for some reason your program requires you to have your thesis or dissertation bound, then the margin on the left-hand side needs to be 1.5 inches. And that's to give room for the binding to not interfere with it. But most of you are probably in programs that no longer require binding. My program no longer requires it. Go ahead. Yeah, if you, well, you don't have to upload, like if you do the bound version margins, you can upload the bound version
Yeah,
margins,
you don't
right?
need to make two different copies. The one uploaded to ProQuest can have 1.5-inch margins and lines and stuff like that.
Yeah, they don't care as long as it's consistent. Also, be aware that even if you're not required to have the thesis or dissertation bound, you're allowed to bind it if you want to have bound copies for your personal use or for your faculty or for your friends and family. It's a pretty good deal if you choose to get it bound. So what you would do is you print off all the copies of the thesis. You have copies of your signature page from your faculty. And you take your copies first over to the cashier's office and you pay the fee of $18 a copy. That's really cheap compared to what a lot of publishing companies would charge you for the nice binding that you get on these. It actually looks like a book, and it's got letters in gold on the spine. It's very spiffy. You get your receipt from there, and you bring that to the graduate school, right? The graduate school will take all your printed copies and the receipt, and they'll send it away for the binding, and then they will email you when it's ready to pick up. So you can do as much or as little of that as you want if your department doesn't require you to have it done. Any questions about binding practices? Go ahead.
Just to clarify, Jim said you did the thesis 1-inch margin, and that's the only format that you need to program.
That's correct.
But if later you decide you want to get it bound, that's still okay?
If you want to get it bound, you really need to go to the 1.5 later. But for example, like let's say first you just want to pass your defense and get it uploaded to ProQuest, and you're like, okay, I'm going to leave the inch margins, and that's fine. Then that's fine. But when you make the decision to have it bound and you print the bound copies, those need to be at 1.5 inches on the left. Because otherwise what will happen is the binding will be too close to your left-hand margin, and it might actually eat some of the letters on your left-hand margin. So you could do it, but it would look ugly.
Right. Yeah. So if you did the 1.5 on the front end, you'd be covering the left.
Yes, that is true. Good point. Okay, step 2. One of the most challenging parts of putting together the thesis is figuring out what front matter you have to have, what front matter you don't have to have, and how to number it, okay? So the page that will be of most interest to you in the thesis and dissertation guidelines, I believe, is page 6. This page here, where it says Table 2, Arrangement and Numbering of Pages. What this page is showing you is that there are lots of things that could be in the front matter. So this tells you all the different things that could be in the front matter. This column tells you whether you have to have it in the front matter or whether it's optional. This column tells you how to number it. And this column tells you whether you have to put it in the table of contents. Okay? We're going to talk through each of those things so that if you have any questions about them, that I can help clarify them for you. In the handout, I've created this little guide to help you. So everything above the line that I put there are pages that are counted. That is, you actually pretend they have numbers. You just don't put the page numbers on them. And the stuff that's in bold is stuff that has to be there. The stuff that's below the line, you have to have a table of contents. It's in bold. You number it with small Roman numerals. The others are optional. And if you have them, you number them with small Roman numerals. What I'm going to suggest is that you actually do this in a counterintuitive process where you create this first stuff that's not going to have any Roman numerals first. And then we're going to put in some of your thesis text and format it. And then we're going to go back and do the table of contents. And the reason we're going to do this is twofold. Number one, it's going to make putting in your section breaks easier. And that'll make it easier for you to switch from no page numbers to Roman numerals to Arabic numerals. The other thing that it's going to do for you, it's going to let you auto-generate your table of contents. So I'm going to show you a trick that will let you mark the headings in your dissertation so that once you generate that table of contents, number one, you don't have to worry about how to line up the page numbers. It'll automatically line them all up for you. Number two, if your pages change at some point, like let's say you type a version of it, then your committee member says, oh no, I need you to write more about this other section. You add in some extra pages and you're like, well, crap, my whole table of contents is messed up. If you do the table of contents the way I'm going to show you, you can go back and click one button that says Update Table, and it will fix all your page numbers instantly, as opposed to having to go back and correct them all by hand. So that's why we're going to do this particular format. Go ahead, sir.
Section breaks within my actual body of text.
Yeah. That should not affect your table of contents in any way. Your table of contents should be able to handle that change in layout, because as long as the numbering won't change, it's just the position of the page. So yeah, it's fine. Good question. I'll show you how the table of contents knows what to do in just a moment here. Let's start with a sample electronic file. Now, Emily will email this electronic file to all of you who are attending this workshop. And what this lets you do is you can actually type the information directly into the Word document, and you don't have to worry about how many spaces down and is it centered right. You can just literally come in and replace this text with the stuff that applies to your project. And let me zoom in on this a little bit better so you can see what we're doing. Okay, so some of this is very intuitive. Anytime you see brackets or italics, take them out of the electronic document and replace them. So the first thing that we're going to do is just type the title of whatever your project is in all caps. So I hit the cap lock, okay. Uncap locked it. My brilliant dissertation, 3 years of patience here. Okay, or whatever your title happens to be, my thesis, whatever. The next thing that you need to notice is this line here. If you are writing a thesis, this line will stay the same, a thesis submitted to the graduate school. If this is a dissertation, you replace it with the word dissertation. Like so. All of the rest of it stays the same. Scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. In partial fulfillment of the requirements for the degree of, and here you just type your degree name in all caps. So for example, if you were graduating from my program, it would be Master of Arts. You need to find out what the correct name is for your program. So for some of you, it'll be Doctor of Philosophy. In other disciplines, it's all different kinds. So it could be Juris Doctorate. It could be any number of different kinds of degree configurations. But I'm just going to put the Master of Arts there. Notice I do not put my program title yet. That goes on the next line. So the Master of Arts in, and I erase this text. In professional and technical writing. Then notice, this is another thing that you need to make sure that you check with your advisor about. My program is an interesting case where the title of my program is different from the department that I work in. So notice that I put the name of the program under Master of Arts in the Department of Rhetoric and Writing. In the College of, and you need to make sure that you get your college name correct too, and that's, for some of us that's changed. So my college is now Social Science and Communication. And again, your advisor will have all this information for you, so it's always wise to check with your advisor. Okay, your month and year of graduation. This depends on what semester you're graduating in, and it has nothing to do with when you actually do this. It depends. It has to do with when are you graduating. So if you're getting ready to graduate this spring, your month and year of graduation is May 2015. If you defend after the May 1st deadline, your date of graduation is August 2015. If you defend into the next semester, it's December 2015. And that's true regardless of what semester. So it's always May, August, December, and the year. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Type your full name as it appears on university records, okay? Let me take this opportunity to say that this would be a good time for you to check and make sure that the name that appears for you on university records is the name that you want to appear on your binding. So for example, if you use a middle name as your primary name and you don't want your first name to appear, but if you get embossed and it's your first name that's on there, you need to make that change before this gets there. If you are getting married, getting divorced, you don't want the name of your ex-husband on your thesis or dissertation, now would be a good time to get that name change made before they put it on here. Because once this goes through, whatever is in boss is what shows up on this thing. And if you don't want that on there forever, then get it done. So my full, and you also, if your middle name is part of your name in boss or banner, as mine is, you have to put your full name, the way that it's listed in boss or banner. So that's my name. Any questions about the name part? Okay, and then you type your previous degrees, the awarding institutions, and the conferral years here. You type them in reverse order, so highest degree, most recent first, and work your way back. So if this were my PhD dissertation, then I would type like so. You can go back as far as an associate's degree if you want, but you don't have to. But any other major degrees should be listed here. Yes, sir.
So I'm reading
Are both institutions listed as the awarding institutions on your diploma? Then yes, absolutely.
You're in bioinformatics, right? They actually have a special way they like their title pages done. If you want to come to my office afterwards, I'll show it to you. I don't remember how they have you do it, but they have a standard thing. Yeah.
I'm so glad you asked. Any other questions? Because this is the end of the title page for your project. Yes.
And abbreviations are okay?
Yes, abbreviations are okay, especially for this part, because depending on where you got the degree, and so it could get quite long. And it's really good if you can keep them to a single line, if at all possible. Yes, ma'am?
My BA Community Studies with the speech emphasis, do I have to put that all
No,
there,
you do
or
not.
just
I'll just
community
BA in Communication Studies. Yeah, they don't care about your
Well, I was
emphasis.
like, oh my degree.
Right. So yeah, they mostly just care what is the name of the basic degree. Great question. Any other questions you can think of about this part? Okay, let's move on. Next page that you're required to have is the copyright page. Blessedly, this is a very easy page. Type the full name as it appears in the university records. And the year of your degree. Nothing very mysterious there. Keep scrolling. Okay, this is an old version of the approval page, so you'll have to do some deleting to take out some of the unnecessary text here. This is also, by far, the most screwed up page of any page that anybody ever submits. And particularly when you have to get signatures for it, it's a real pain in the butt to get it re-signed later, so if you can do it right the first time, it's going to save you a lot of grief. Okay, this thesis, type the complete title of your document here. Notice that it isn't in all caps here, and it needs to be between the quotation marks, so the quotation marks stay. Listen, I almost deleted my front quotation mark.
They really want to be
Grr. All right, I'll just put it back. Bye. Type your full name. Is approved by, and now here's where the fun comes in. Okay. Most of you will have a dissertation or thesis advisor. Notice that if this is my dissertation, I need to take out the word thesis and replace it with dissertation. Then you list the full name of your thesis advisor. So for my purposes, I'm going to pretend that this is my boss. Okay. I erase out this information. And now here's where it gets particularly tricky. Okay, number one, please spell your committee members' names correctly. If you are not certain about your committee members' names, go on the website or actually ask them for the correct spelling. As you know, we have a wide variety of spellings of folks, and also they're never sure what their official name is. Sometimes they use their middle name, sometimes they use part of their name. You just need to find out what that is. The next part that confuses people is sometimes, notice that it asks you for the academic rank and department. Some people get confused between the person's academic rank and their job title. So let me show you first what would be wrong. If I typed for my boss, Chair of Rhetoric and Writing, that's true, he is the Chair of Rhetoric and Writing. But that is not his title for the purpose of this piece of paperwork. His academic rank is professor, and he's a full professor. So he is Professor of Rhetoric and Writing. And then you take that out. Also, because we are no longer doing the binding frequently, if you get this electronic version, you don't need these signature lines anymore. So you can take them out, and they can just sign above where you typed their name. There doesn't have to be any specific line. This is great because then you don't have to worry about, are the lines all the same length? Do they all line up the right way? It just makes it so much cleaner. If you have any questions about that much, and then I'll start getting into some special cases, because there are lots of special cases with respect to this form. Okay, special case number 1. What if you have a co-advisor? Okay, so you might have somebody who's your main advisor, and then you might have somebody who's either at another institution or who is actually serving as a co-chair for this project for whatever reason. If so, you can refer to the example that's in the graduate school thesis and dissertation guide. So notice this is the page that we're making right now, the basic approval page. And right after that, in the handbook, is an example for what to do if you've got a co-advisor. Okay, that won't apply to a lot of you in the room, but it might apply to a couple of you. Any questions about where you put the co-advisor? Okay, good. All right, next special cases, we'll start adding committee members, and we'll talk about situations. Okay, so let's say, for example, let me take out my blank line here. The next person who's on this committee is, oh, that reminds me. Okay, notice that when I put in my boss's name, I did not put Dr. George Jensen, and I did not put George Jensen, PhD. Notice that you don't put you don't put any of their academic credentials, not the doctor on the front, you don't put Mr., Ms., none of that. You don't put anything on the back end, no PhD, MA, MS, none of that. Just the name and the rank. Okay? So the next person I'm going to do, I'm going to imagine that Dr. Allison Holland is on this committee, and so of course I'm not going to list that she is Dr. Holland, and it doesn't matter that her doctorate happens to be an EDD versus a PhD. That's all irrelevant. Again, most people think, oh, well, she's the Writing Center director. Yes, that's true, but that's her job title. That's not her rank. Okay? So she's an interesting case, too, because even though she holds a doctorate, she does not hold any of the professor ranks, because if you're a tenure-track professor, and this is getting into really arcane academic things, but when you're first hired, you're an assistant professor, and then if you get tenure and you're promoted, you're an associate professor, and then if you get your final promotion, you're a full professor. So one of the things that you need to know about your committee members is, what is their academic rank? Are they tenured? Are they full professor? Are they associate professor? It's not, and sometimes the websites are not helpful because they're not always up to date. So again, it's always polite and correct to ask your committee members for their correct academic rank. There are some people, though, who hold terminal degrees who are not on the tenure track, and they have different ranks. So for example, Dr. Holland is a senior instructor of rhetoric and writing. And I know that because I'm the graduate coordinator for my program, and I have to keep track of these things. But almost nobody else in my department, student-wise, would know that that's her correct rank. So that's why it's important to check. Does that make sense? Okay, next special case. What if you have somebody on your committee who doesn't work for UALR? Okay, and notice, by the way, as we're going down here, that I don't have repeat, you don't have to put thesis committee member, thesis committee member, thesis committee member. If I back off you can see what we're creating here is oh, I'm pretending this is a dissertation, so I also need to replace this. Okay, but once we start this, then you list the dissertation advisor once and you give them a place to sign, and then you can just list the whole committee and then the program coordinator. Okay, so I'm going to pretend that my next member of this committee doesn't work at UALR. I started out the same way, so first I'm going to put in his full name. And then if he works at another institution, you will again start with the rank. So he would be Professor of English, comma, his institution. Like so. Make sense? Any questions about that? All right, let's take it one more special case. What if they don't work at UALR and they are not working at another academic institution? So let's say they are somebody in the community. And this is frequently true for my program because, like, we'll have somebody from Axiom who will serve on a committee. You might have somebody from NCTR at your committee. There's all different reasons that you might have somebody who doesn't work for an academic institution. And if so, then you still follow the same basic pattern. So let's say that Allison Nicholas from Axiom serves on this committee. I type in her name. And then I list, instead of professor or senior instructor, I list her job. This is the case where now you flip to the job title. So she is Director of Recruiting at Axiom. And that's all there is to that. Any questions about any of how to set this up for your committee structure? Go ahead. Evel, yeah.
Would you write the entire professor of English University at
this thesis or dissertation for the degree, and the chair will sign for the other person? Excellent, excellent question. Also, if you do choose to get it bound, then you can have signatures, and so then you would have a signed version of this page for each copy that you plan to have bound. Any questions about that? These are all very good questions. Okay, let's move on. Okay, next page is the fair use page. And this language about fair use, you can just leave exactly as it is. You don't have to do anything to it. The part that you need to make a decision about is the duplication section. And what it says is, I authorize the head of interlibrary loan or the head of the archives at Ottenheimer Library at UALR to arrange for duplication of this thesis for educational or scholarly purposes when so requested by a library user. Duplication will be at the user's expense. This is for rare cases. I mean, I'll be honest with you, this is almost never used. Most people today will go directly to ProQuest if they want to look at a copy of your thesis or dissertation. But occasionally, for whatever reason, somebody doesn't want to download it from ProQuest, they are allowed to write to the library or call the library and say, would you please give me a physical copy of this project? And if so, you say here, you're okay with that. Or you can refuse them to have physical copies. Don't care what you choose, but you should erase the option that you're not going to pick. So if you're okay with them making physical copies and giving it to somebody who asks for it, erase this part that says I refuse permission. And for the, only sign it if it's bound?
Mhm.
Okay, yeah. All right, so if you're only uploading to ProQuest, you can take out this signature line too, like so. So this is all you leave is that single statement. If you're binding it, you just, oops, sorry, you sign it. No, I can't go Control Z it. Oh, there it comes. Or if you decide, oops. Or if you decide that you're going to refuse permission, then go ahead and erase the top part out and leave just that.
And if you're writing a dissertation in both this section and the fair use one, just replace the word thesis with dissertation.
Yep, right here. Any questions about that page? All right, that was an easy page. All right, the last required page is your abstract page. And again, fill in the blanks. And again, graduation date here is the month and year, as we talked about before. Then your abstract, and you can just literally delete this and replace it with your abstract. Any questions about any of those pages? Okay, so now if we go back to the main handout, you can see that we've created the first 5 required pages, and then it's totally up to you to decide whether or not you then want to have a dedication or acknowledgments section. You do not have to have those. You do, if you have a protocol approval involved, have to include your protocol approval statement after the abstract. And this is a case where you should have received some kind of an email from the IRB, for example, or the animal, I forget the name of the board. Yeah, IACUC, there you go. They will have sent you some kind of an email or letter. You can copy and paste that, or you can take the PDF file and implant it directly into the thesis or dissertation. You don't have to type anything new there. Okay, that is the end of the pages that do not get numbers on them. Notice that we're still going to count those pages, we're just not going to put any numbers on any of those pages. Any questions about that part of the front matter? All right, now we're going to skip. So notice that in my Word document, after the abstract page, I currently have no table of contents, none, no list of figures, no list of tables, no symbols, nothing. I'm going to go straight to the text of the thesis. And this is because I'm going to use the text of the thesis to create my table of contents, which is the fun trick that we're about to show you. Okay, the very first thing that you need to do is if you have started typing your thesis in Word's defaults, you need to change the paragraph spacing to match the requirements of the dissertation and thesis guide. So, as you may or may not know, Word's defaults are not set to double space. And the first thing you have to do is set them to double space. So I have some sample text here that's all formatted in the Word default. And I'm going to use Control A to highlight all that text. And then I'm going to right click and select paragraph. This is where I change my spacing. Okay, so you'll notice in here that when mine comes up, it's all blank, and that's because there are multiple formats involved there. Many of yours will show that there is 10 points of spacing after the paragraph, and that the line spacing for the default is multiple at 1.15. Okay, these are the things you need to change. So you need to change the line spacing from multiple to double. And you want to reduce the spacing to 0. Okay, so you see what I changed? Okay, then you click OK. Oh shoot, it highlighted everything, that's why. Crap. Okay, back. Alright, I just want to do this part. I was like, I was sure that that was in the default. And it was. Yeah, okay, so this is what you should see. It says multiple, you change it to double, you change these to 0. That's right. Okay, so this is what your text should look like. Another minor thing to catch. Notice that my text here is in Calibri 11. It needs to be in 12. 12 is the correct size for the body text. So I highlight it. And change that size. And then you're super excited because your stuff that took like 2.5 pages before is now taking like close to 6, and you're like, yeah! Looks bigger and more impressive. Okay, so now your stuff is compliant. The next step is to make your headings work. Oh, go ahead, sir.
Do I need to make this left aligned, the whole text? Or?
I encourage you to use left alignment.
It is required.
Oh, is it required so you can't use full justification? Yes! Okay, let me point out for what he's asking about in case some of you don't know. Notice that I have highlighted the left align thing, and notice that that means that this margin here is ragged. Some people like to do paragraphs that are full justified, and I'll show you one. Some people do this. And it doesn't hurt this paragraph very much, but if you've got a lot of long words or you have equations and stuff embedded in your paragraphs, and you do a full justified paragraph, Word inserts spaces to stretch the lines to make them line up, and frequently it looks really bad. Frequently you have huge gaps sometimes in between words as it tries to stretch things to make them fit. So that is not encouraged, and it doesn't really help the readability of text. So yes, you're exactly right, left aligned. Yes, LaShondra. And then...
Will it have to be Calibri, or can it be any other fonts?
It can be any of the true type fonts. Which is to say, let's see if you can actually, it looks very professional and attractive for you to use a different heading font than your body text, and there's nothing to prevent it. What you do want to do is make your formatting reflect what level of heading it is. So for example, your main level heading should be like a 16, then the next under should be a 14, so that the differentiation is important. You want to do this in a very specific is to use the styles section in Word to control your heading formatting. Yes, sir?
No, when we use styles from Word, it sometimes has different spacing for different headings.
Yes, it does, and I'm going to show you how to fix that. So you can 100% control the formatting of those styles, and you have to, because you're right, it puts in extra spacing in some cases, and that violates the double space rule. Okay, so you're going to need to be able to define your heading styles, but once you do, this is going to do two things for you. Number one, you'll be able to style your stuff with a click of a button instead of going in bold, 16, change the font, over and over again. And it's also the magic that makes your automatic table of contents happen. Okay, so watch this. All right, so I'm going to highlight this that I want to be my heading 1. And if I come over here and I roll my cursor over heading 1, you can see it's already going to change how this is placed. And you notice it's going to do 3 things that are wrong. Number 1, it's going to put 24 points of white space in above the heading. It has shrunk the spacing to single space between it and the line that follows, and it's turned it blue. Okay, there's nothing wrong with the Cambria that it's chosen, but we ain't having blue headings. Okay? Which is not to say that you cannot have color in your projects, but the color should be there for meaningful purposes. That is, it's part of an illustration, it's part of a chart or a graph. It's not just there because it would be pretty to have blue headings. All right, so we can't have blue headings. Crap. What are we going to do? We're going to put our cursor here over heading, and we're going to right-click, and we're going to do modify this heading. And I'm going to change it to what I want it to be. So let's say I'm okay with it being Cambria. I want it to be a 16 and not a 14. I do want it to be bold. I'm going to change it from blue to black. And here's the tricky part. I can see down here below the preview that it's giving me that it's showing the weird spacing. To change that, you have to come down here to the Format button and do Format Paragraph. And again, this is your special place to look. Change the spacing to what we changed it to before. No points of white space of before. Line spacing is double. Okay. You'll know if it worked because your preview changes. So now your preview looks like what it should, and you click OK. Ah, why didn't it do it? Oh, because I just modified it and didn't apply it. Okay, so I modified it, and now that it's highlighted, I have to click it to change my text. And now my text is changed, and that looks good. Any questions about that? All right, now here's where some fun comes in. All right, so let's say this is my second level heading. I need to make it look subordinate to this heading, but it needs to not look like my normal text. Okay, we do exactly the same process. I'm going to modify the heading 2. I'm going to change it to Cambria, and I'm going to make it a 14. And I'm going to make it bold. Whoops, I am going to make it bold. And I'm going to fix my paragraph spacing again. 0, double space. And then it's okay. And now I click the, oh, that's still italics, crap. No, we do not want italics, at least not for this heading. You might have them other places. Click. Ooh, that's ugly. Okay, so maybe for Cambria, I would make it a 12.
And if you single space your headings, we don't care.
Oh, really?
Well,
that's good to know.
We care about your body text because that's for readability, but for headings, if it looks better single spaced, we're not counting your spaces.
Okay, that is excellent to know. I'm still going to make this a 12 because I still think that's just too big. And Cambria is a big font, so actually that still looks fine. Okay, so now that I've modified that, I can do that to all the headings that I've set up in this document. So I can come down here to rhetorical situations and make it a heading 2. And I can come here to mastering the art of rhetoric, and let's go back and create the table of contents. Do you have any questions about any of the things we did up to this point, though? Yes?
So you had headings 1, 2, and 3. You have 20 headings.
Yeah, you can have as many headings as you want to, and you can create your own styles for them. So really, it's just a way that you signal the hierarchy of your document. Now, speaking as a tech writing expert, I would recommend that you not have more than, say, 3 levels of headings if you can possibly avoid it, because readers just can't keep track of that many levels of hierarchy in a long document. There might be some cases, though, where you have to have 4 or 5 for whatever reason, and if so, you can make your own styles for those. But the key thing is that visually, you need to make each style distinct. So if I had to go to a heading 3 now from what we've set up, my next one maybe would involve italics, and maybe not bold. Again, consult your style guides. Some style guides spell out what you're allowed to do for the different levels of headings, but you control that otherwise.
But your headings are numbered 1, 2, 3 on your document, right?
They're not, well, they're numbered in the style. They're not numbered in the document.
Okay.
Yeah, oh, and so that's, oh, I see what you're thinking.
Right.
So no, this has to do with the level that the heading is and not how many headings there are.
Okay.
So yeah, and in fact, so this is a heading 1 because it's a big heading. This is a little subsection, so it's a heading 2. And this is a subsection of that other big section, so it's a heading 2.
Okay.
And now when I go to my next big section, that's my next heading 1.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, I'm so glad you asked that because that's an important point. Yeah, this is like if you've ever done any web page writing, this makes a lot of sense too, because it's the same way that we do headings in HTML. Any other questions about any of this formatting of the text before we now go back and do the page numbering and the TOC? All right, hold on to your horses, because this is the part where it gets a little crazy. All right, the first thing that we need to do is we need to create a page for the table of contents to live on. So I'm going to put the cursor at the top of my first page where the thesis text starts. I'm going to go to the References tab up here at the top. And I'm going to come over here to the left-hand side and choose Table of Contents. Okay, now this drop-down menu gives you different kinds of formats, and again, as long as it fits the style guide, you can change any of what the wording says. You can change the formatting later. You're just picking a basic style to start. So I'm going to choose Automatic Table 2 just because I like it. It says Table of Contents, and it shows how the headings are going to be indented, and I happen to like that format, so I check that. Okay, it inserts the table of contents as it currently exists at the top. Oh, this is interesting. Oh, because I only have those headings marked. I was like, didn't recognize any of the other pages, and it shouldn't. Okay, so it sticks that table of contents at the top of this page. I now come over here and insert a page break to separate it from the thesis text. Okay, so now we've got the beginnings of what we want. We've got the front matter, we got a table of contents, we got the thesis text. We need to come in and fix the table of contents because obviously no blue headings. So I want it bold and I want it black and I want it to look like that. And I don't want that much space. Actually, we probably need to fix the spacing on this whole table of contents because I bet if we choose paragraph, sure enough. Okay, so spacing before and after is 0, line spacing is double. Okay, that's better. That looks like what it's supposed to look like. Okay, so now the problem that we have is that this part where the text starts should be page 1. And the table of contents should be little Roman numerals, probably 7. And none of this stuff that came beforehand is supposed to have numbers. So now we have to do this part. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start putting in section breaks. And this is the part where if you click like one wrong thing, it messes up all your page numbering. So pay close attention to what we're clicking on here. Okay, so we're going to go to the page before the table of contents, which for the purposes of this document is our abstract. I'm going to put my cursor at the bottom of that page, or as close to the bottom of it as I can go. And on the Page Layout tab, I'm going to choose this option here, Breaks. And I'm going to choose a next page section break. Okay, so then notice that it jumped to the bottom of my next page. I can tell, if you're nervous about whether or not it made the break correctly, you can come down here and click in the footer of your document. Oops. Come here, footer. Okay, this is what you want to see. You see that at the bottom of this page it says footer section 1, and here it says header section 2. This is good. You now have 2 sections in your document. Okay, now, notice that if I click in the header for section 2, this box here is checked. This is a very bad box. Unclick it right away. Unclick link to previous. Then scroll down to the footer for section 2. And notice that when I click in the footer for section 2, it's back. Unclick link to previous. This is what separates the formatting and lets you have completely different formatting on the two sections. All right? So now we need to do this one more time because we need there to be 3 sections. One for no page numbers, one for little Roman numerals, and one for Arabic numerals. Okay, so we're going to do exactly the same process again. I put my cursor in the bottom of the table of contents page. I come to page layout. I insert a next page section break. Okay, we know it worked because my cursor jumped to the next page. If we want to check, we click in the footer. And we see the correct numbers again. So now we see there's a footer section 2 and a header section 3. All right, now you're all set up to start putting in your page numbers. Okay? Yeah, once again, click in the thing, unclick link to previous, go down to the footer of section 3, unclick link to previous. Now all of your sections are separated from each other. So now you only need to put in page numbers 2 places. On the table of contents page, where the page numbers are supposed to be centered in little Roman numerals. Okay, we're now going to come in here, and in my footer, I'm going to choose page number. Notice I'm in the footer and I'm in the design section, I choose page number. Okay, it asks you, where do you want the page number? In this particular case, we want it in the bottom of the page, in the center, like so. So I'm going to choose plain number 2, bottom center. Okay, so it puts a page number in there. Great, except for the fact that it's an Arabic page number. That's not the one we want. So highlight the Arabic page number and right-click it and choose Format Page Numbers. Okay, here I can change the number format from 1, 2, 3 to little Roman numeral 1, 2, 3. I choose that and I click OK. And now it's little Roman numeral 6. Pretty sweet. Now what we want to check is, very good, because we unclicked link to previous, notice that there's still no page numbers on that front section. That's good. We don't want any page numbers on that front section. The only things that will get little Roman numerals is if we go back to the handout. Every single one of you will have a table of contents. Some of you may have figures or illustrations. If so, they get their own little table of contents, and the number for that will also be little Roman numerals. Some of you will have a list of tables. It gets its own page with little Roman numerals. Some of you will have a list of symbols, and if any of you have a preface, which is very rare these days, but some people are old school and like to put them in, that gets little Roman numerals. But for most of you, the table of contents will be all you have to worry about with the little Roman numerals.
So I have an executive summary which here literally guides through each chapter.
Yes, that would be placed where the preface is placed, and would again get little Roman numerals. Excellent question. Anybody else have a special case? Go ahead.
No, my question was, it automatically numbers to 6, even though there is no numbers.
That's right. Yeah, and I'll show you why it did it, just in case you have something silly happen, because occasionally silly things are known to happen in Word. When I highlighted this and did format page numbers, notice that this button is active, continue from previous section. So it knows it's counting the previous section even though we didn't put any numbers on those pages. This also allows you to have complete control over where the numbering starts, and this is going to be our friend when we do the next section because we have to start over at Arabic numeral 1. So we will change this box in the next one.
And in these footers, once you set up your page number, make sure at the top you change where it says footer from bottom, make it 1 inch.
Yeah, notice here what she's referring to here, the footer from bottom, and it's only 0.5 inches. Needs to be 1.0, like so.
It's for the Arabic numerals too?
Yes. the top needs to be 1.0 there. Okay, so watch the next part.
It doesn't.
It doesn't?
No.
Oh, okay, well good. That's one less thing to worry about. Okay, so here we are in section 3. And this is where we need our numbers to change. Notice again, if we scroll to the bottom of section 3, because we did such a good job separating those things, we have no numbers. But we need Arabic numerals to appear in the right-hand corner from here on out. So again, here's my cursor in the header of section 3. And I'm going to do the same process again. I'm going to choose page number. In this time, we're going to choose top of the page, plain number 3, which sticks it in the right-hand corner. Okay, then we see that it's got the wrong page number. It's page 7. So we come in and we do this process again where we highlight the page number, right-click, format page numbers. And now we're going to switch this box. Instead of doing continue from previous section, we're going to say start at 1. Okay. Ta-da! And then we double click in here. Come on, get out of the...
Press the big red X.
Oh, you're right. Thank you. Okay.
I did this in high school.
And yeah, you've slept a lot since.
Well, I was in a program that was based on college, so they would like, I don't want you, don't number your title page and stuff, and then we're sitting there going, oh.
Yep. Okay, so now this part is correct. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for our thesis text, but our table of contents now is out of date. It has the old page numbers on it. So our last step is to go fix the table of contents. So I click on the table of contents and you see the box that comes up upon it. And right here it says update table. Update table is your friend. Click update table and it asks you, what do you want to update? Do you want to update just the page numbers or everything in the table? This is another place that the update table is your friend. We only did the page numbers. That's the only thing that's changed. So we're going to do update page numbers only. But let's say my thesis chair told me, I don't like the heading that you use there. You need to change that heading. Well, all I have to do is change it once in the body of the text, and then I can come here and do update table, and it'll change all the titles for me too. So if you add text, if you subtract text, if you change your headings, it now no longer matters. As long as all of your styles were placed correctly, you can now change the entire formatting of your table of contents with a single click. And notice, this is one of the reasons I like doing it this way. Because we marked our heading 1s and heading 2s, it knows which ones the heading 2s are and it indents them. If we had a heading 3, it would indent them too. And all of this lines up perfectly down the right-hand margin. Again, we will have no mercy on you if your approach to creating the page numbers is to come in here and type period, 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 period until you get to the margin. No. Because it never lines up, right? Do you know? And you know why it never lines up? It's because the size of these letters is different. So depending on, like, see how much less room an I takes than an S? Well, depending on every single heading you have is going to have different combinations of letters, so the spacing is never going to be the same and never lines up. So then it looks kind of like a drunken man is weaving down the side of your highway in your margin, you know, where you want it crisp, all clean, all professional. This just makes your life so much easier. You'll never have to manually update anything. You'll just update it in your thesis body, come back to this, click update table, and all change. Any questions about any of this stuff that I've shown you? Yes, sir?
When you mentioned that footers were 1 inch, you said at 1 inch. If you initially decided to do the 1.5 inch for binding purposes, would that have anything to do with that?
No. The 1.5 is just for that left margin, and so all the other margins will be the same whether you're binding or not. The left margin is the only one that changes.
Okay, once you've done that, you can then pick up where you left off, continue typing your thesis text. Just remember to apply your styles correctly as you continue to type things. and it'll all be taken care of. You'll know that if you see things missing from your table of contents, that probably the mistake is that you either didn't update or that you didn't mark your style on one of the headings. But that's really the bulk of the difficulty. Do you have any questions about any of the stuff we've talked about today?
So, do we need any list of figures or list of?
Yes, if you have a list of tables or figures, then you create that the same way that you did the table of contents. So I'd stick my cursor down at the bottom of the table of contents. I would insert a page break. Oops, come here, insert a page break. And then notice that's automatically, because we're creating the page break inside that section, it's numbered correctly. Now, I'll tell you a little secret. You can do your list of figures the same way we did your table of contents, okay? So let's say, for example, just for giggles, let's see if we can make this work, even though I didn't practice this before I came, so if I screw it up, then we'll figure it out, because I've done it before. All right, so I'm gonna pretend that I have a figure that goes here. And I'm gonna insert a picture. We'll insert a sample picture of hydrangeas. Or no, we'll do the jellyfish, that's cool. There we go. And we'll shrink it down to a reasonable size. Okay, you can get Word to make a list of figures for you if you use the captioning tools inside Word. But a lot of people don't even know that the captioning tools exist, so they don't use them. Now, first of all, I hope it's that everybody knows you don't just stick pictures in your thesis or dissertation and not have some kind of a title or label on them that you should refer to. And that when you want people to look at that particular figure, you should also have something inside the paragraph that says see figure 1 that points them to that point, or let's say figure 1 isn't on the same page, see figure 1 on page 14 or whatever that is. You don't just blindly have pictures running around in there. But let's say I wanted to put a caption for this picture that Word could use to create my list of figures for me. I would again come to the References tab, and I would use this, the Insert Caption thing. Now look, some things should be pretty familiar to you here. You see Insert Caption, you see Insert Table of Figures, you see where this is going. Okay, so we do Insert Caption. It gives you the option to just say figure 1. It also gives you the option, like you can say it's a figure, an equation, a table, whatever you want it to be. Okay, I'm going to leave it as figure 1. I hope too that you know it is good practice to give your figures a title and not just call them figure 1. So for example, I'm going to say this is figure 1, a jellyfish in the Pacific Ocean. So that it's some kind of, so that it's at least descriptive. And then I'm going to do okay. And then I think I need to find my caption style and make it look appropriate. Yeah. So here's my caption style. Notice we do not want blue captions any more than we want blue headings. So I'm going to come in here and modify the caption style. I'm good with 9 point. I don't really love the italics, and I'm going to make it black.
If it's in your thesis, it will have to be at least 10.
10?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, it's 10. And now I'm going to apply the caption style. Hello.
Can I do it centered?
Yeah, I'm gonna move it in just a sec. Hey! Oh, it did modify. Oh, it put it in Calibri. Son of a gun. Okay, much better. Okay, and in this case, you can do a couple of things. You can either, see if you center it here, the picture isn't centered, so it doesn't look right. I personally favor lining it up with the edge of the picture, like so. And again, this is a matter of style. Your style guide may tell you how they want it formatted. Your thesis chair may have preferences. The style guide and the thesis chair are usually right. So whatever they ask you to. Okay, but now this knows, right, that this is a figure in the same way that it knows what a heading is. So now if I want to, I can come back to the blank page that we created here, click my cursor in this page, come back to the references, and do insert table of figures. And it asks you how you want this all set up. And I'm going to say, okay, and see what happens. Oh, that's interesting. It didn't give me a heading for it. But I can put one in. And in fact, I'll probably just come grab this one. And change this. Ah.
Never highlight like you wanted to.
No, it never does. And I think I've got weird paragraph space. Yeah, weird paragraph spacing. There, fixed. Okay, and again, you'll be able to do the same thing. So you'll be able to click in here and update this field or update the table.
And because we're sticklers and crazy people, you'll just make sure that it says list of figures, not table of figures.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh no, you're fine.
No, I just spaced it off. There you go. Okay, and then you can update your titles and your page numbers for those too, again, with a simple click, which is pretty sweet. Beats doing it all by hand. You do it for all your tables, your equations, your acronyms, all that good stuff.
Now to add the list of figures page line in the table of contents, should they make list of figures a heading 1?
Let's see. Well, actually, let's just see if it
adds it.
Yeah. Oh, but it's not. Okay, here's what I think I have to do to make it do that. Do you list the table? Well, I guess you do list the list of figures in the table of contents. Okay, so then I need to make sure that this is actually a heading 1. Okay, so now it's a heading 1. And now that didn't do it. Oh, there it goes. Okay, when I did update entire table, but well, of course. Yeah, so like that.
Yeah, anything that comes after your table of contents has to be in the table of contents. So if you have like a list of tables or a list of abbreviations, it's got to have a line in there too.
Excellent point. I'm really glad you asked about that. What other questions do you have? You look a little bit shell-shocked.